Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So where we're going to be kicking off is at the very second to last paragraph on page 12. So page 12, second to last paragraph, but don't worry, we're going to have lots of time to find it because we're going to do just a little bit of review and I'm going to turn it over to Terry. So where we're at this point in the Big Book study is Bill Wilson has effectively taken his first and second step. Now, I'll point something out. He's still drinking, and the steps as we know them do not exist yet. And on page 8, we saw what I like to call Bill Wilson have his step one experience. And that's on page 8, the first full paragraph where it says, "No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master." That for me was his step one, because in his prior hospitalizations, he had learned of his illness. He learned of the physical allergy and the mental obsession. He then learned of the fatality and the hopelessness of this illness. And then what he learned was that he was going to die of this thing. And he was at that place, the coming to the end of himself. And that was his step one. And he wasn't able to stay sober on a step one because we can't stay sober on a step one. But then who shows up is his old buddy, Ebby Thatcher. And Ebby Thatcher brings him knowledge of what our solution is in our program of action. And our solution in 12 steps is the spiritual awakening. And how we experience and how we get there to that solution, that is what later became our 12 steps. And on page 12, what we saw, so before that, we were watching Bill Wilson wrestle with this idea of a power greater than himself. And he was open and he was closed and he was open and he was closed and he was fighting it. And we saw him on page 12 take his second step. It didn't exist as we know it yet, but just for our purposes. When he says it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself, nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. That is step 2, part 1. He believes that a power greater than himself could exist. And I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. And what he sees in his friend is the spiritual awakening. And that is step 2, part 2. That idea that there could be a power greater than himself, step 2, part 1. And step 2, part 2, that this power could remove from him the mental obsession, the insane thought that he has to go back again and again to that first drink. So over to you, Terry, to do any review that you want to do. Say anything that because you missed last week, and take the next paragraph. Pew, pew.
Thanks, guys. My name's Terry. I'm an addict, alcoholic. Good to be here. My son was sick for the last 3 days, and he's feeling better. So he's pent up with energy. So just FYI, if he does start to run over here, I might have to talk with my video off. So just letting you guys know, I gotta hide it from him. Yeah, thank you for covering me last week. There was a snowstorm, so I was on the highways plowing the snow, being a service to other people. So thank you for the flexibility page. I mean, now we're going into some fun pages. I guess Bill and Abby, I don't know the history too well, but I don't think it was that smooth when he said, choose your own conception of God. I think there was a little arguing, look at Bill for the last 3 pages. He's basically, bitching and moaning about God and how does he think about God and his agnostic temperament towards God and how does he feel and think about it. And then he hits him with this revelatory sentence, says, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?" Which is pretty fascinating for someone who didn't believe in God, but was given the opportunity to choose whatever God that makes sense to me. Uh, that was not me. And in the beginning of recovery, they told me to choose my own conception, and um, that has changed and evolved in many different areas of my life. It started off with what is it, a good early direction, and that failed me. And when I made it a doorknob, and then that doorknob failed me, and I made it a door, and all of a sudden I made it great outdoors or rush outside to kind of feel better. Then being locked up in rehab, they don't let you out that much, you know. So I had to make my God bigger, and bigger and bigger. But it all started with this simple sentence that has been giving it has been inclusive to every single one of us. Um, I was just thinking about an experience where I didn't want to go to. It says be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they offer. And I was telling my people that I was working with, I'm like, hey, you want to grow in your relationship with power, why don't you go branch off and check out religion? And I was telling all these people to do it. There's my kid. Sorry. Yeah, he's making noise. I was telling all these people that to go do this and grow up in recovery, and guess who wasn't me? I was kind of being a hypocrite about it. And then my wife, she invited me to church, and I didn't want to go. And all of a sudden, that form of agnostic temperament came up. I thought about how religious people are kooks, how they're hypocrites, and blah blah blah. I was extremely disturbed. And while I was driving to this place, a prayer hit me, which was a prayer that we just said, the set aside prayer, the lay aside prayer. And I said, please lay aside everything I think I know about church, so I may have an open mind and new experience with church. And I walk up and I hear the pastor talking about fear. And I'm like, oh, I like fear. That's a good topic. And he said, it's not a matter of if fear crops up, it's when fear crops up. I'm like, oh shit, he just stepped on you. you know? And then all of a sudden I'm praying to the God of my own conception at this place of worship. And it has grown from there. I don't know why that story came into my mind, but why not, right? It has morphed and changed in many different ways, but it all started with choosing what it means to me, right? And it said, and that statement hit him hard. It melted that icy intellectual mountain. He shivered and lived a slave, basically, and so did I. I was a worship of my mind. I worshiped the God of reason. I worshiped my thinking. And then when this guy hit him with those words, something powerful went right through him, and then this it burst out of him. It talks about his experience at the cathedral where he felt something. It's the third time they reference it, and it burst out of him. That God within you is going to burst out of you. And it happens when we do the program of recovery, the 12 steps, is that we get rid of all the things that are blocking us, and the power will shine out. Now it says, I think we're at the dust, I was convinced, right? Okay. Thus, I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want Him enough. When I got to this portion of the big book with my sponsor, or my most other recent sponsor, he told me that this is the program of recovery that we are going into. This is what Bill did to stay sober. And what I want you to do is, after each sentence, an activity or a statement or whatever that Bill did for his recovery, ask yourself, are you willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe, and be honest about it. I've taken people through this process a lot, and they're all like, yes, 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 and they're shit faced after a couple of months. I want be honest. I don't want just because I'm someone who's helping you doesn't mean that I'm someone that's better than you. Why don't you be honest with me? Tell me the truth. I want to hear a no, right? If you say a no, what you're gonna do is pray for the willingness to do what Bill did, and that willingness will come. Now, here's one thing. I'm concerned with us humans when we want God enough. That's a statement. That's something he did. Are you willing to do that? Do you want God enough in your life? Yes, no, or maybe. At last, I felt, I saw, I believed that scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. Here's that significance, right? The cathedral, the real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I needed and wanted God. Am I willing to do that? For there had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon his presence has been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly within myself. And so it had been ever since. How blind had I been, So you notice that Bill went from the world of the intellect to the world of the spirit. And he goes right back to the world of the intellect with these worldly clamors, mostly with inside of you. And I was just talking to someone, I asked him how long you've been sober. He's like 6 months. I'm like, all right, how long you been drinking and drugging? He's like, well, about 10 years. I'm like, all right, so well, your old personality for those 10 years is gonna pop up a lot in the first few years, because this is how much time you've been sober, and this is how long you weren't. You get my drip. So those worldly clamors are gonna come, and it's gonna talk about that on the next page, that this price that we have to pay, which is actually kind of a small price, but feels like the end of the world, means the price means that, the destruction of self-centeredness. Where is it? Yeah. The destruction of self-centeredness. And that takes a long time to destroy. So piece by piece by piece by piece process, right? And I can't do this on my own power. I need an acquisition of power to do this stuff, right? And because of that chipping away at our old self, our old personality, right? Those worldly clamors within ourselves will be taken away. The books like to says to be removed, right? And then you'll be placed in a position of neutrality. All right, I'll shut up. Back to you, Paige. And my kid's being good right now. That's all right. Pew, 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 pew.
We believe in miracles because we see miracles, and we are
Yeah,
miracles.
yeah.
Mary's a miracle. Heck yeah, miracles all over the place. All right. And I love when it talks about thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. The takeaway from that, at least for me, is this idea that like I've got to seek this power. I've got to seek this relationship with this power. And it's not that like God is sitting there like, okay, like as a jealous lover, but that idea that God is like a gentleman or a vampire, like you got to invite them in. That's a weird mixture of thoughts and ideas. But that idea that like I've got to seek, I've got to build that relationship, and this power is there waiting for me. I've just got to take a step in that direction. And how I do that as an alcoholic, as an addict, whatever brings you to this study is through the 12 steps. And he has, like, as Terry was describing, he has this powerful second step experience where it's like the scales fell from his eyes. This new world comes into view. And if you guys are familiar with the well-known AA speaker, and he wrote a book, Chuck Chamberlain, and it's called A New Pair of Glasses, which describes his experience living the spiritual way of life on the spiritual journey. And I think it's a beautiful way of describing this. A new world comes into view, or a new pair of glasses. Because as I grow spiritually, especially when I'm kicking off that fourth step, if your experience is like mine, it's like everything changed, and yet nothing has changed. And you bear with me with this. I write a little bit of inventory, and my family gets better. Family didn't change. Some of you are just like trying to escape the holidays, and you're like, family hasn't changed. But family hasn't changed. My childhood hasn't changed. The jerks on the road, they haven't changed. I don't drive. I actually don't get road rage. But that idea that they have not changed, and yet how I see them has radically transformed. And as Terry was talking about, the real significance of my experience of the cathedral burst upon me. Well, what happened at the cathedral? Well, we spoke about it last week, but on page 1, and actually, if I have the share screen ready, I do. So I'll talk about this real quickly and show you guys, because I had the share screen ready, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Rock and roll. And so what happened is on page 1. It talks about how we visited Winchester Cathedral, and this is Winchester Cathedral on the inside. Like it is this beautiful, ornate structure. And it is incredible. And he was sitting there, and he was filled with doubt and insecurity. And what he was facing was the horrors of the First World War. But he was also faced with that deep insecurity that he was going to be thought of as a coward. That fear of I don't want to lose my life. But bigger than that, that fear of what people think of me. I'm sure none of us can relate to that. I'm sure we're all driven by it. And in that moment at the church, he had an experience. And that experience was where he felt this connectedness. this peace and presence came over him. So that's what it's referencing time and time again. And because what opens me up to this idea of a power beyond myself, but my experience. And even if it's not my experience, it's the experience of like, man, Terry's not the same guy that he was when he got here. When Terry talks about who he was when he was drinking, when he was using, man, that's not who Terry is. There is a light on in his eyes. There is a hope in his spirit. Man, Terry is a changed person. I believe that that's true. And that's a place to start. And so and what we saw at the bottom of page 12, top of page 13 is why this is not a two-step program. Step one, I'm going to drink again. Step two, better get God. Cool, because he had this experience at the second step where he sees this need for this power of God. But it's not enough to stick. It's not enough. And when we talk about worldly clamors, man, and mostly those within myself, y'all know what worldly clamors, at least they look like for me and myself. It looks like fear. It looks like resentment. It looks like selfishness, self-centeredness. It looks like jealousy. It looks like insecurity. It looks like guilt. It looks like shame. It looks like the twisty and resisty of unmade amends. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what it looks like within myself. And it says at the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. And so that date, he goes to the hospital. That's December 11th of 1934. And it said treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. And you know what's an interesting thing? If you have your copy of Lois Remembers to hand, you don't need a copy of Lois Remembers. I just happen to have it because I'm fun. Fun at parties, you know. I got it upside down, which is kind of how my life works. If you got your copy of Lois Remembers, we can pop over to page 89 and we can go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph. It's second from the bottom. If you have a copy, if you don't worry about it. I'm going to read it. So Lois says, Bill had left a note for me. Upon finding it, I was quite upset. Why hadn't, and so the note is about Bill Wilson. What happens? Bill Wilson, he's like, you know what? I gotta sober up. I'm gonna check myself into the town's hospital. So this is in reference to treatment seed wise. It made sense for Bill, but we're gonna see Lois was not in agreement with this grand plan and design. And in fact, Bill Wilson, he was drunk on the subway. I'm sure some of the New Yorkers can relate to being drunk on the subway. Shows up with 2 bottles. They gotta be half finished at least, you know, like maybe a quarter left. And he's like, Silky, I got it this time. And Dr. Silkworth was like, oh dearie, you certainly have. Off to bed with you. And so this is what it says. It says, Bill had left a note for me. Upon finding it, I was quite upset. Why hadn't he consulted me about going to the hospital? What good would it do anyway? He would get drunk again the minute he left. Who was going to pay the bill? The money I earned was just barely enough to keep going, including Bill's liquor bills. We had been forced to ask for help in the payment of the previous hospital bills. We couldn't do it again. Dad had no money. Where could I get it? We had occasionally pawned some silver. Perhaps I could sell some wedding presents now, but what possible permanent good could it do for Bill to go to the hospital again? And so what we're seeing is the real hopelessness. I mean, Lois, who was always Bill's like ardent cheerleader, like, you go, Bill, she could see the hopelessness and the futility of this. And now what we're going to see is the difference. What does Bill Wilson do when he goes to the hospital? Well, what he's going to do is now he knows what the solution is, and he has a way to get it. And what we're going to see is him take the actions that later became our 12 steps. Over to you, Terry. Pew, pew.
Thanks, Paige. Yeah, and then he's gonna go over the circle and triangle here. You can do on the top of this page, right? This is the recovery portion of the bottom portion of your triangle. And these steps are, yeah, I get a kick out of people like the steps are supposed to be done in order. And Bill didn't really do them in order. And we'll go over it right now. And yet again, I challenge you, I to have considerations for what he did. and ask yourself honestly, like, am I willing to do this today? Yes, no, or maybe. Because he's gonna say some stuff that sometimes I don't want to like to hear it, right? There, I humbly offered myself to God. Ask, are you willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. Am I willing to give absolutely everything to this power? As I then understood him. And I guess what is that? Understood means to learn through experience, right? Yeah, Paige, I learned that from Paige. To do with me as God would. He's taking his third step here. He's saying, here I am, take me, right? And how do you know that you've done the third step, or how do you know that you've seen the miracle in the third step? You see the actions in the fourth step. You see yourself writing pen to paper, you writing out your fourth step means you made a decision to abandon yourself utterly to this power by writing inventory, by telling someone your inventory, and so on and so forth. I place myself unreservedly under his care and direction. That ain't easy to say. I'm gonna say maybe on that. I'm gonna do this right now with you guys. That's a maybe for me. Unreservedly under his care and direction. I got some good ideas. I got some good direction right now. I'm gonna put a maybe, and I'm gonna create a prayer for that sentence, asking for the willingness to place myself unreservedly under the care of God's direction and care. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without God, I was lost. This is a fun story. I called my boss a clown and I got fired. And I had so much attachments towards success and money, and that was part of my self-centeredness for a long period of time, which has been destroyed, which is kind of odd because it's left me about 6 months ago. It was kind of just removed from me. And I remember when I called him a clown, I got fired, and I'm like, I got this. I'm okay. I'll find another job. And I didn't find a job for 3 or 4 months. And for some odd reason, I'd ask God for help. And you know, when you have God thoughts, when the chips are down and whatever it is, the big book just starts talking to you. And that's the sentence I said. I said, I admitted for the first time. Admitted means I let in. I'm letting in for the first time that of myself, I am nothing. That without God, I am lost. I kept repeating it over and over and over again. I was leaning into something of the unknown, which is a scary thing for any of us to experience, right? Doing the steps for the first time. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. All right. This is not something I am associated with from past experiences. Am I willing to do that? I ruthlessly face my sins. That's step 4, right? Am I willing to do that? And became willing to have my newfound friend. I like that newfound friend. That's a yet again they capitalize a word in this in the middle of the sentence. Right? Bill wasn't being crafty or anything. He was doing that for a purpose. He's referencing a power greater than himself. And I want you to put that on a piece of paper, lay aside all the prejudice you have against newfound friend, and ask yourself, what does my newfound friend mean to me? You're going to create your own power. You can create your own concept because you're going to ban yourself utterly to it in the third step. It's one of our 4 requirements for spiritual growth, which we find on pages 45 and 40, so 46 and 47. Um, so I recommend that you put that on there because it will change. Newfound friend, take them away. So that's step 6, root and branch. Step 7. Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to let go absolutely unconditionally? Root and branch. And I'm not in charge of the judgment factor of letting go of my defects or sins. I guess sins was missing the mark. That's what it means, right? And Paige could go more into all that stuff, but this stuff about defects of character or character defects, I don't know what's good for me. I don't know what's bad for me. The thing is that whatever I think is good for me is actually bad, and whatever I think is bad is good. Right? I just need to be aware of them through the process of the 4 step, becoming aware and facing these things, right? And facing these fears and facing these what is it called? These resentments or these selfishness. I'm becoming aware that I'm greedy or that I'm self-centered or that I gossip and stuff like that. These are the things that are blocking me from power. Am I willing to let go of these things? Without reservation. You know, it's usually there's a lot of pain associated with letting go of a defect character. which I could go later on when we get to the sixth step, which I guess Bill's on right now. I How many days was he sober until he took the steps? Do you know, Paige or Howard? He was three. So he's 3 days sober when he's taking. He's going to go through steps 3 through 11 on this page. Newsflash, if you're new here, you don't have to wait 3 months to do steps 3 through 11. You could do them right now with us as we speak. All right. So my schoolmate visited me. I was fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. This is Ebby checking in on him in the hospital. And what he's doing is that he's doing a fifth step. His deficiencies, his problems, right? He is actually opening up his heart and he's telling another human being something that he's probably never told anyone in his entire life. He's being honest with someone. And something happens, that the description of the fourth dimension is talked about on the next on page 8 and page 25, but also on the fifth step. I made it to God, God's spirit, to myself. That's our mind. And towards our other person, that's body, right? So mind, body, spirit all interlocked together. And as a result of that is a way of life, the fourth dimension, right? And so that's what's happening during this point in moment in his life is that something's happening. He is letting out everything that he's held deep down inside of him, which is blocking his heart from bursting out of him. And it's going to burst out, right? So here we go. We made a list of people. I'm sorry, let's go back. Am I willing to do that? Fully acquaint. I like that word fully. And someone anyone tried hiding their fifth step from their sponsor or like their sex conduct inventory? I did. I got two hands. I was 2 hours deep into a fifth step, and I was like, all right, I get it. I'm selfish. I'm this, I'm that. And I was like, I tried hiding my sex conduct inventory from him. I thought he wouldn't notice. He's like, Terry, you missing something? And I'm like, yeah, this page right here. And thank God I pulled out that page. Our fifth step talks about we're trying to create a new relationship and a new attitude with this power. What's the definition of new? Something I've never experienced before. And thank God that I laid it all out there because I had a revelatory experience. I felt those fifth step promises on page 75 when I did it. But ask yourself, am I full? Am I ready? Am I willing? Yes, no, or maybe to fully acquaint to just lay out everything, every dark cranny of the past, every twisted character? Am I willing to throw it out there so that another man could hear it, a closed mouth individual, someone that can hold my secrets in confidence, and also to God, right? Am I willing to do this? My experience with doing it one person it's been changed. Guys, you could be dishonest with everybody. You can. But if you're honest with one person and you lay it out on the table, you are going to get an experience that you've never had before. We made a list of people I had hurt. Step 8, am I willing to do that? Or towards whom I felt resentment. I like that word entire. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting I am my wrong. So step 9, this was not easy. I'm gonna put a no for that one. I don't want to go to people and admit that I'm wrong who I was angry at? Anyone got a current resentment on them? Anyone? I guess I'm in a room, a bunch of saints. Okay, Janice, she's not. Thank you. I'm not by myself here. Thank goodness. Bunch of liars we got. Imagine going to that person that you actually resent and you have to make amends to them. Right, Maggie? Am I willing to do that? Hell no. Hell no. Be honest. And if you say no, or maybe create a prayer for the willingness. Oh, you left in your car? Yeah, good. Right. Yeah. Create a prayer for the willingness to make amends or a willingness to do step 9. That willingness will come. That is called grace. That is called a God moment. You can call it whatever you want, but something will happen when the willingness will generate when you're asking God for help, right? It's usually through pain that you let go, right? So never, I like this one, never was I to be critical of them. Am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe, right? You ever go to a man and someone screwed you over? There's we're sometimes, yeah, it's not we're all just saints here. They're not all saints. Like these people screwed us over. And I have to, what is it, never be critical of that? Who's willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. I'm gonna say maybe. Sometimes I want to break people's kneecaps sometimes with my words, but it's I can't. All right. Right? So never was I being, this is the program of recovery that built it. You want what I have, you do what I do. I did what Bill did. That's been my experience, right? I was to write all. Circle that word all. That's my favorite word in the big book. I don't know the definition of all. Maybe if you have the 1930s definition of all, that'll be awesome. But all means all, last time I checked. All such matters, all my men, to the utmost of my ability. Am I willing to make every single one of my amends, even though I might have 400 or 500? Say hi, Phoenix. Hey, buddy. Hi. Hi. Can you say hi? Am I willing to make amends to 400 plus people and pay back all the millions or thousands of dollars that I owe other people? Yes, no, or maybe. I hope you say yes. I'm sorry. I hope you say maybe or no on that because that was a strong no for me. But you know what I did? And I almost drank because of that. I said, yes, I was willing. Yes, I am. I'll do it. But I was being dishonest. It's scary as hell. But the magic and the miracle of step nine is when I have action in step 10, when I am actually doing step 10, because I need an acquisition of power to make every single one of my amends. Me on my own power. Uh-oh. Come on. Oh. Uh-oh, he's trying to grab the phone. No. We gotta go to Paige. Pew pew pew. Thank you.
Pew
Oh, but
pew. All right. Oh, yeah. If you can hop, yeah, you got it. All right. Well, he asked me.
I just gotta turn the video off.
No
I'll be
worries.
right.
I'll take it a sec. So, I have a 1930s dictionary, and I was like, I'll look that up. That sounds like a fun activity. I'm not even kidding. I enjoy this. So, the definition of all is from my 1930s dictionary. This is why I'm fun at parties. It says the whole quantity of, as substance, duration, extent, degree, or amount, the whole number of, again, idea, all of, collectively, as individuals, particulars, or parts, every, as with every kind, any, use after a preposition or verb, the whole quantity, the whole amount. Sounds like it's all. That's what I'm getting from that dictionary. Oh,
But that's my favorite word, hands down. Hands down.
awesome. Do you want me to keep going or do you want to?
Yeah, no, no, keep going, because
Sounds good. Not a problem.
yeah.
All right. So what I'll do is I love that Terry's breaking down the steps. And when it talks about there, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admit that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. Now, I love that Terry's asking, like, let's turn these no's or maybes into prayers. Because when I work with people later on, we get to that idea that there must be no reservation of any kind. And of course, we all lie about that and say, no, I don't got any reservations. But if we do, what do I got to do? I got to take that and I got to take that to God. But one of the things that I love in this book is the sneaky prayers, sneaky promises, anything sneaky. I'm just here for the sneakies. Sneaky descriptions of spiritual awakenings. Oh, that's my jam. All right. And so you're not gonna leave this big book study a want of prayers. We're leaving it prayer heavy. We got you guys. So if you were wanting, hoping, or at least willing to receive a sneaky prayer, here is what I like to call the Bill Wilson third step prayer. And how I say it is, God, I humbly offer myself to you to do with me as you would. I place myself unreservedly under your care and direction. I admit that of myself I am nothing, that without you I am lost. And I get to use and utilize that prayer on a daily basis. Now, there's so much value in creating our own, but I always like to be sneaky. And when somebody's like, oh, and with a prayer, your choice, I'm like, well, let's do, and then I'll do one of my weird ones, like, let's do my Bill W. third step prayer. And people are like, what? It's like when I get weird and we start talking about the Missy Elliott promises. If you know, you know. Alrighty. And when we talk about him going through steps 4 through 7, and like Terry was saying, kind of in a backwards way, where he did a bit of his 4, he did his 6 and 7, and then did his 5. What we saw is he ruthlessly faced his sins and became willing to have. So I'm going to pause at sins. Because if you grew up with like a authoritarian religion, if you grew up hearing that word and you hear it now and you're like, oh, and you want to recoil from it, it's like, oh, that is not my jam. Well, what we can do is we can replace that word with shortcoming, defective character. That's what we can use. But as Terry was alluding to, there's a number of definitions of the word sin. And sin is also a term that is used in archery. And in archery, what a sin is when you miss the mark. And that is a gentler, more palatable way to look at the word sin, if it carries a lot of baggage for you. Now, for me, I really love a variety of spiritual seeking and a whole whack of faith traditions. And so like I would come across this language, and for me, I'd have to bridge it. And for me, it was just throwing in defective characters, throwing in shortcoming. And I was kind of thinking anything that separated me from this power. But I've been on a real so actually the last few days, my Audible, it's like, hey, there's all these philosophy books, but they're only free until New Year. So I've been power listening to them, which is completely unmanageable. But right before that, I was on a real Oxford group literature kick. Because I tell you, I'm fun at parties. I'm just going to show up with my 1930s dictionary, ready to look up the word all. And oh, let me tell you about VC Kitchen and his book, because I'm partway through that one, having a delightful time, which again does not ingratiate me to be being invited out for the holidays. But what I will say is in that book, I found VC Kitchen, his book is I Was a Pagan, had the best definition of sin that I had ever heard. And the definition that he gave was like simple, and it was simply this: sin is anything which came between me and any other person and stood between me and God. So anything that cuts me off from you and anything that cuts me off from God. And that, man, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's not this like, you are bad and live in shame. It's like the things that I need to get free of are the things that are cutting me off from this power and that are cutting me off from you. And that's what's got to go. And I love that it's root and branch and capital F friend, root and branch. Because yeah, Terry talks about acquisition of power. For me, I talk a little bit more about relationship with power, because I need to build this relationship. It's got to be a continuation. And at first it might feel awkward and uncomfortable, but you know what it's like after a day and you just want to, spill the tea with your bestie, whether that's your spouse or just a good friend or somebody that you love, you just want to be open and honest with and share that time with. And that's what it's like for me with this power. It's about a relationship. But root and branch. So it is God, higher power, creator, friend, capital F, taking away these defects, taking away these shortcomings, root and branch. The root is the depth of it, and the branch is the far most outreaching part of the plant. So all of it. And some of you guys are gardeners, gardening folk. I don't think I have enough patience for that. But you guys know, if you're weeding the garden, if you pluck off the top of the weed, it's just going to grow back. So if I just want to be free of the most egregious sort of consequences of my defects of character, it's just going to come back. But am I willing to have this power take all of it, root and branch? And as we approach that, and as Terry's pointing out, like asking ourselves, like, am I willing? And if I'm like, oh man, who will I be? Who will I be? Am I going to be, as I believe it's in step 3 and the 12 and 12, am I going to be the hole in the donut? What am I going to be without these things that I think make me me? And I want you to know, here is my experience, not as a free from all my defects sort of person, deeply flawed, frequently wrong, title of many an inventory I've written, but that who we become is who we always truly wanted to be. And to also sort of like throw around some religious language and find different connotations. The word saint, and we're going to see we are not saints, but that idea that like, what is a saint? And there's a spiritual teacher by the name of Thomas Merton who describes sainthood as being who God has truly called us to be. That's what I'm here to do. I think I'm just here to stop drinking and smoking crack. And sometimes it's like so much, you know what I mean? Or like, let's go to Bendon. But what I'm doing on this journey is to become the person that I always wanted to be, that I didn't know it. That person that God has called me to be, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. And it was from this willingness to grow and to take this surrendered action that Bill has permanent sobriety. I've not had a drink since. And I love that idea. Yeah, step 8, step 9. Ooh, that's the one. It's like, ooh, all my amends, even to the ex, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, but that's where growth is. Man, like if I want to learn about the unconditional like love and power of God, make amends. And if you're like me, who is not like before I came and like was doing this work and I would hear a statement like that and I'm like, are you out of your flippin' mind? What do you mean? Like the two must have nothing to do with each other. And as Terry has been saying, the things that I don't want to do are the things I need to do. And the things I want to do is the exact opposite. What do I want to do? Avoid amends at all costs. What do I don't want to do? Make the amends. What do I need to do? And man, and as a result of that, man, there's freedom. So I'll take the next paragraph because I might need to buy Terry some time. So it says, and this next paragraph is dedicated to the 11th step. Spoilers, step 11, and you can write it down. So I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. So there is a deep inner, the word conscience, well, I'll talk about this a whole lot throughout the study, but its etymological origins, we can see why I'm so much fun, are Latin. And con means with, and shus or sire means knowing. So this God with knowing that happens within, this connectedness within. And it says, common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Now, experientially, this is what this looks like for me is like, oh, I could just communicate like that. That was like uncommon sense. Like I could just say, hey, I don't know if that day is going to work for me. Let me get back to you, as opposed to just saying yes and obsessing about it quietly for months, probably, because I'm well adjusted on my own power, neurosis. Put me in the dictionary with that. Like that's who I am on my own power. And even with God's power a little. And so it says, I was to sit quietly. Now, when we talk about sitting quietly, what we are talking about is a meditative practice. Now, there's only a few hills that I die upon. One of which is that it is spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection, as opposed to progress, not perfection. The other is that you can recover. Yes, you. Yes, you. Yes, you. You can recover. Yes, you can. That hill dying upon, absolutely. I will argue that. I will argue that tooth and nail, root and branch. Now, the other one is that meditation did mean meditation. If all I do is look it up in a 1930s dictionary, which I'm fun and have and will do, it's going to say to think. But if I have a look at some of these texts and practices that were around in the 1930s, we see that meditation was there the whole time. So that this is a meditative practice. And a lot of what the early AAs, because a lot of what the Oxford group was doing in their quiet time was coming to a place of receptivity and expectancy. So expecting to receive an answer. But you'll notice, now, I'm not actually going to do this, but let's say I go over to you, Terry, and then I continue talking. And then I'm like, okay, seriously, over to you, Terry. And then I'm like, oh, and this idea, and this idea. It's not really going to be turned over to Terry now, is it? right? And I got to come to that place of stillness and quiet to let Terry speak, to receive the knowledge of what he's going to impart on this paragraph. Not quite ready to turn it over, but I will in a sec. So that's just my meditative tangent. All right, so sit quietly when in doubt, asking. Now, anytime in this book it says we ask or to ask, that is a prayer. So meditation and now prayer, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. So that is another sneaky prayer. So if you're looking for sneaky, again, no want of prayers, you're going to be stockpiled on prayers. You can put them in a bucket. We got you. Where it is, God, I ask for direction and strength to meet my problems as you would have me. And I can come to then a place of stillness. And that's what it was looking like. And it says, never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others. Now I know none of you guys would ever partake in any black and white, all or nothing thinking, not you guys, but I know that many of us have stumbled over that, and it's like, I can't pray for my defects to be removed because I can't pray for myself, or like we get really rigid and black and white. So what are we talking about? I cannot pray for like, God, get me a pony. And I can't even like tuck it under the idea of, but I'll name him Clip Clop and he'll be my service pony, upon which I will do all of my service. Uh, no, but am I going to be more useful to you if I'm filled with God's love and God's patience? If I am, you know what I mean? Like, God, I pray that you take from me anything that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Man, that's how I pray for myself so that others may be helped. And it says, then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. When I focus on what I give, I'm coming from a place of abundance and I receive more than I can imagine. When it's all about me, what I can get, ooh, it's never enough. And I'm living from a place of scarcity. Terry, are you good to hop in?
Yeah, I'm good. Just have to turn off the video. I got a little guy chasing me. So, I mean, am I willing to do that? Am I willing to sit quietly in doubt? That's not easy to do. I, I I assume that there was this thing called two-way prayer. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. But imagine being 3 or 4 days sober and have to sit quietly in doubt. No wonder why they had issues with the meditation at the beginning. Am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. And honestly, ask yourself, yes, no, I'm not willing to do that. Or maybe I'm willing to do that. Or possibly I'm willing to do that. Be honest with yourself. Because these are the things that Bill did in order to recover. Am I willing to do the same thing? He talks about thinking. Paige talked about it already. We're talking about focused thinking. So if you know how to worry, you know how to meditate. When you worry, you focus your thinking on the problems. And anyone know how to worry? I do, right? And if you're focusing your thinking on the problem, but however, when you're meditated state, when you're meditating, you're focusing your thinking on the solution on God's word, expecting to have a phone call and have a conversation and a relationship with power. Not a one-way street where hey, Paige, how's the weather in Calgary? And I hang up the phone on her. I have to listen to what she actually has to say. That's what we're talking about. It says, what my friend promised when these things were done, 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 right? Am I willing to do the things that he's talking about? And a lot of us are not there. If you are not there, don't worry about it. Ask for the willingness to get to to be there, to get that little mustard seed of strength, right? That little mustard seed of willingness to say, you know what, let's screw it, let's do it. That's been my experience with doing the steps. Like, all right, I'm screwed. Either I do this work or I'm gonna drink again. That's basically where I was at in the very end, right? Yeah, wow. Sorry, guys. He said, I would enter upon a new, there's that word new. What's the 1930s definition of new, Page? New relationship, keyword relationship, takes two to tango, with my creator. That I would have an elements of a way of living. There it is. Fourth dimension. that would what was it say which would answer, I'm sorry, which would answer some of my problems. It says that word all again. That witchcraft word, my favorite word. All my problems. Now, when I first read that, that's a bold statement. Anyone think that's a bold statement? I definitely thought that was a bold statement. My experience with doing the things that need to be done, which Bill did, when I look back at it, what I've experienced was a new relationship with my creator that has answered not only just some of my problems, but it has been all my problems and in rough going problems. You guys know I had a tragedy a couple months ago. Not only did I not survive that, I thrived during that. I was a joy bringer during that. I was a hope bringer during that. Right? I was someone who was not the same personality that I was before. I was a new person. Right? What was it say? Belief in the power of God. So it doesn't say believe in God, right? What's wrong, buddy? Believing the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain just means to keep going. The new order of things were essential requirements. Oh, I thought the only requirement for membership was the desire to stop drinking. Uh-uh. That's for the fellowship. We're talking about treating the mind here. This is the recovery portion of your triangle. Now, am I willing to do that? A belief in the power of God? Yes, no, or maybe. Plus enough willingness? Yes, no, or maybe. Honesty and humility and establish it. Am I willing to do that? These are not easy things to do. These are things that I have to be placed into a position of desperation to do. That's been my experience. I don't like to do the things that I don't want to do. It's not common to me. I've never experienced something I don't like the word new. I really don't because I like what's comfortable. Who likes what's comfortable? I do. I like going back into that comfortability, and because I don't like the uncomfortable, I don't like the unknown. I want to know. I want to know. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is a spiritual one. This is a one that we live from moment to moment with our hearts. And it starts there. And it says it's simple, but it's not, it's simple. Anyone could do it. Anyone could do it. Everyone in on all these Hollywood squares could do what Bill did, but it's not easy. It really is not easy. We would have millions of stadiums filled with us at every single damn meeting that we went to, but it's not. And it's because of this. It says a price had to be paid. It's a very small price, but it feels like the end of the world. It feels like the end of the world because the alcoholic ego or your mind is fighting for its damn life when you're doing the things that you don't really want to do. And it said it meant the destruction of self-centeredness. I love this line. Am I willing to do this? This is probably the one line that I'm gonna say and maybe two, because it's got the word all twice in this sentence. I must, is that word must. I know that's Howard's one of his favorite words. I must turn in all, that little witchcraft word all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. Am I willing to do that? Yes, no, or maybe. Back to you, Paige. Pew, pew, pew.
So I did look up the word new, and it means, in my 1930s dictionary, recent in origin, modern, novel, lately made, produced, invented, or discovered, recently entered upon, or commenced, not previously used, fresh. Also, when I was trying to find all, I was skipping through the dictionary and I found the word asbestos, and I'm like, oh, that's not good to find in there. Also, right below New is New Amsterdam, which was the early name of New York City, so called during Dutch occupation. So just a fun little geography fact that I'm sprinkling into dictionary corner over here. I'm fun at parties. Alrighty. And what we picked up on as the bottom of page 13 is that paragraph starts to launch us into Bill Wilson's 12 step. And the rest of the chapter is dedicated and devoted to his experience with the 12 step and his 12 step work. Now, when it says my friend, now that's lowercase f, so that's our homeboy, Ebby Thatcher. And my friend promised when these things were done. So the promise is the result. So when these things were done, we take these actions. But I want to point out this promise is not just a promise that Ebby Thatcher is making to Bill. That this is a promise that is being made to each and every one of us. And if you don't believe me, we can pop over. We don't have to. It's up to you. All bouncing around is consensual. We can pop over to page 60. And on page 60, what we see is the 12th step as it's outlined, often as we see on the wall or on the scrolls or on the Zoom screen. And it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So that same promise is being made to us. If I take the actions of these steps to the best of my ability, I will get the result. And the result is a spiritual awakening. And if you're here today, what I want you to understand is the 12 steps have to be alcoholic proof because they're for us, or addict proof, or compulsive overeater proof. You know what I mean? You can't mess them up. We follow the directions as outlined in this book to the best of our ability. That is promise. The result is promise. And again, this is what a spiritual awakening begins to look like. A new relationship with capital C Creator and the elements of a way of living. And I always want to emphasize way of life, because this is not a set it and forget it program. And that is all my problems, as Terry was saying, all my problems, not just my problem that I can't stop picking up the drink or the drug or the whatever brings you here. All my problems. All my problems. That's the power that's available. And the only thing that is asked of me to get from where I'm at to this, in step one, the hopelessness of my condition, to the spiritual awakening, are these, the essential requirements. Belief in the power of God. I don't even got to believe in God. I just got to believe that that power exists. And I cannot deny that power when I see somebody like Howard or Terry or Kathy or, anyone here that's like the lights, and there's way more than them. We got a whole bunch of people. So if I didn't name you, I love you very much. We're right at the hour, so I'm just trying to land the plane as quickly as possible. So what is required is belief in the power, that the power could work, plus willingness, honesty, and humility. So that's what I need. I need to be willing, I need to be honest, and I need to be humble. To be humble is to think that I'm no better than you and I'm no worse than you. And for somebody like me, I'm dependent on God to establish and maintain. So when we talk about way of life, I always want to emphasize this is not a set it and forget it deal. This is how I live my life. The 12 steps weren't a thing that I did one time over there. The 12 steps are how I show up to all areas of my life. And I love this. I've been talking about this a lot, this idea, because we just, kind of in the midst of the holiday season. And I talk quite a bit about how sobriety is a gift. And deeper than that, emotional sobriety is a gift. And what I mean by that is I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. I didn't become worthy of it any more or any less than anyone here, any more or any less than anyone that is out there dying of this illness. I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. And how I equate it to is a little like Christmas morning. And some of you are probably sick of this metaphor. I remembered it on Christmas. I'm like, I got this metaphor that I use. So I've been using it a whole bunch because I forgot about it and then remembered. Because that's how my silly brain works. But it's a lot like Christmas morning. And so if you imagine Christmas morning, the tree is there. And it's the bows and the balls and the tinsel and the lights are all aglow. And it's Christmas morning, so man, it's a little too early. And it's dark, so that tree's got such that beautiful warm glow. And underneath that tree is a gift. And that gift has been immaculately wrapped. Imagine the most beautiful wrapping paper, just perfectly wrapped, and the most incredible, wonderful bow. And on that gift, there's a name tag, and it's got your name on it. It's already there. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. It's already there. Now, I know it says a price had to be paid because we're going to be like, hey, girl, what do you mean? The price that I paid to receive the gift is a part of the gift all along. And see, what do I need to do to get that gift? I need to awaken. And an awakening, I've got to get out of bed and I've got to go down those stairs, not up those stairs. I'm not climbing this ladder of success. In fact, each and every step that I take, what I've found is it's an outpouring of more and more of myself to the unconditional love that is God, that I didn't know that when I started. You know what I'm saying? And I go down those steps and I receive the gift that is already there. And when it says I must turn in all things, turning in all things to this power, man, I don't have any power. This thing has power. Why would I not want to let this work in all areas of my life, especially when no areas of my life are working when I get here? Like if I'm rigorously on it. And the other thing, now this is very stupid. So I'm going to end on this, but bear with me. It's the metaphor of Santa Claus. You see, what happens is I receive the gift, but once I get the gift, I get my marching papers, which is, do you guys remember in the 90s, Tim Allen, the Santa Claus movie, where he like murders Santa on Oopsie Doopsies, and then he has to become Santa? That's this metaphor, but with less accidental Santa murder. I'm going to toss it over to Terry for any closing remarks because we'll need some. But then I receive this gift, and my job then is to go around and make sure this gift is available to others. And the more that I do that, the more I play Santa, the more that I give away what was so freely given to me, and the more that I realize was in that gift all along. Over to you, Terry, for any, no pressure to be normal, but closing remarks.
No, I think that we'll just end right there, guys. Thank you, Paige. Pew,
Awesome.
pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew. Sounds good. I will stop the recording.